So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the KNH-UoN webinar. Your moderator, Dr. Amina Guled, and with us today is Annette Omoyo. She's a principal state counsel in the Office of the Attorney General, and more so, she is also one of the few drafters we have in the country. So I would like to introduce her to the team, and we are hoping we can, before we start the session, people can fill in the poll so that we can have a good understanding of where we are at as healthcare workers in understanding basics of laws. So Annette, how are you? Welcome to today's session. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Dr. Harry. Thank you so much for this opportunity to get to interact with all of you. I'm so amazed at the number of participants. Well, I don't think that's what I anticipated, but I'm glad that people are logged in, even as we discuss, Kenya's health laws, which are paramount. Noting that the right to health is one of the rights that Kenya as a country is aspiring to progressively achieve. So I don't know, my name is Annette Omoyo. I work for the Kenya Law Reform Commission. I was previously working at the Office of the Attorney General. We are still under the Office of the Attorney General. I've had experience working in Parliament under the Junior Legislative Fellowship with the State University of New York program jointly with the Kenya Parliamentary Service of Kenya. I have a love for the law. I have a love for writing the law, and I have a love for talking about the law. So I hope that we're going to have a lovely afternoon together. And I'm looking forward to the interaction. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I dropped a little bit, technical challenges. But so Annette, maybe I missed it, but just wanted to, you had a brief introduction, so I'll just skip that. But maybe we can start with from the historical of Kenya laws and Kenya health laws. Do you mind giving us a bit of an overview for us to have a good understanding from your perspective?
Thank you, Dr. Harry. I'd like to just start from the Constitution. So we all know that the Constitution is the supreme law of a country, and all other laws are premised and anchored under the Constitution. So all laws that come into force or are drafted must be beat in the same heartbeat with the Constitution. They must be anchored, they must, what we call statutory harmony, they must be in harmony with the Constitution. Now, laws generally prescribe rights, prescribe duties, and prescribe, obligations, governing structures, administrative arrangements, and they address, certain spheres in society. Now, we all know about, the WHO. And even if you look according to them, they say most African regions have actually overhauled their constitutions and promulgated new ones. So it's not new to Kenya. Now, the enactment of the Kenya Constitution 2010, lawyers are beginning not to call it the new constitution, but we know that we all keep referring to it as the new constitution. It resulted in a culmination of sectoral constitutional reforms, a lot of reforms within the health sector. Now, in August 2010, one of the reforms that were triggered is the devolution, meaning it restructured health functions for purposes of ensuring that there's improved performance. Now, we see that health became a devolved function. It became an exclusive function of the county government. and then the national government remain doing policy. So consequently, the administration of health services is being rationalized through major reforms of policy, legal, institutional, and regulatory framework. So this triggered a lot of changes in policy, in legal, in institutional, in regulatory framework. Now, for now, it's important to note that government has prioritized health. For purposes of, health is receiving a lot of increased investment, with regards to trying to attain the universal. Now, implementation of concurrent and constitutionally mandated reforms is quite complex, it's arduous, it's emotive, and it's constrained by capacity of limitations, competing priorities and interests, eliciting inertia, resistance, and other diverse sections. The experience of country in terms of our existing health framework is very illustrative. It's something that it's good to talk about, and we look at it in depth. So I'm just going to, so most of it came from the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and we can see, some of the changes that it has triggered. So when we move to look at now, what then, when we're talking about the health legal framework, what happens? What are we talking about? We're talking about that there are some specific laws that are there, and these laws address health financing, they address health leadership, they address health products, it addresses health information. There are laws that are specific on health workforce, like the Nursing Act, like the Technologies Act, we have the Community Health Workers Act, all those things. Then we have service delivery systems and the health infrastructure. Then we have a general health law, which just provides legal provision on health legislation, the scope of the health legislation, health service, which is now the Health 2017. Then we have health-related laws. These are laws that are outside of the health sector. However, they have a great impact on health-related laws. So we have like laws on education, laws on agriculture, on food nutrition, infrastructure, environment, sustainability. So those are the three categories when you're looking at the health legal framework. If you want to look at it comprehensively, then you ask yourself, what are the specific laws? What are the general health laws? And what is a health-related law? So they fall under those two categories. And then under each, of course, there are the regulations. Now, let's begin with the Constitution. Article 43(1)(a) to F of the Constitution outlines economic and social rights. That every Kenyan right to the highest attainable standard of health, which includes the right to healthcare services, including reproductive healthcare, and the right not to be denied emergency medicine. And also rights now relating to food, water, social security, education, the ones that I've talked about, health-related laws. So as I've earlier said, devolution, the health function is extensively devolved. The national government, for as now, is only responsible for health policy, the national referral health facility, and capacity building to county. County government assigned county health services. So we see services is something of the health, the county. So which includes county health facilities, pharmacies, ambulance services, promotion of primary health care, licensing and control of undertakings that sell food to the public. So we see public health in terms of selling of food, veterinary services, cemeteries, funeral parlors, crematoria, all that is what the county is doing. Now, what you see is that this presents a very fundamental shift from what we had earlier on. So it's shifting health profession towards an integrated, people-centered health services. So you're seeing that now what the Constitution has done, it's no longer the health services there and people go to it. the Constitution is trying to make that there's an integration of a people-centered health services. Now, I'd like us to just take a shift to the Health Act of 2017. I don't know how many know about it. I've not looked at the result of the poll.
Yeah, let me just actually share the results in a few. But
Yes.
before that, an interesting statement is when I hear that it took us like 7 years to actually come up with the Health Act. What like what's your thought on that? Like, is it ideally supposed to take that long, and how can we make it a bit more shorter? Can you see the results? I don't know if you can see the results.
Okay. So 20%, let's see here. I'm happy with the Constitution.
Yes.
But at least 43% got it right. So I'm happy with that. Others thought it was 1978 or 2000, but it's the Health Act of 2017. Thank you so much for participating, viewers. So you're within yourselves as a health profession. Historically, the Kenya's health profession is very cadre-centric. So I come in, for instance, if I'm a nurse, so I'll always use a nurse because I am the daughter of a nurse. So if we have any nurses in the house, I think I would have become a nurse if I was in the health profession. So if I'm a nurse, then I do everything as pertains to the nursing. So nurses used to regulate health products, which were called the nursing commodities. So nurses had their own professional body, which regulated them. Then nurses are also able to license, facilities, health facilities. And then you see the same thing is being done with the Kenya Medical for doctors Council. The Medical Council is also doing the same thing. So technicians, so the medical profession in Kenya is so cadre-centric that most people see themselves within their profession. So we have not gotten to a place where people look at the health sector as one and health force as one. So coming to agree was quite difficult. For instance, when we were sitting to agree on who should sit on the board, for instance, you'd feel that most people feel that, if I'm a medical doctor, that's the right person to be a CEO. And we keep seeing this now from me as an outsider. We keep seeing that this is what the health profession is going through. So I think that's part of the reason why it took quite a long time. Secondly, remember, health is complex. Remember my introduction. Not everybody can understand it. It's complex. It requires a lot of, thinking through a lot of things. Number two, the new constitution brought in a lot of, people-centered health approach, which was also going to just change our entire health system. So I think that's part of it.
Sorry, Annette, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So thank you for that. In terms of it gives us a better understanding, that the Constitution was actually from 2010, and we have 3 different categories in the framework pertaining to health, and the health law itself was enacted in 2017, which basically the reason why also it took quite a long time is because of the cadre-centric nature of health of the health industry in Kenya. So in terms of the best approaches, and when we compare to other countries, where would you place us?
I think Kenya is doing very well.
Good.
I see WHO putting Kenya in the forefront in terms of development of policies and legislation that are very forward-looking. Kenya is quite ahead because, the Constitution in itself, if you read the Health Act of 2017, it delineates health mandates delineates leadership structures, duties and obligations, establishes a lot of new institutions, you know, and prescribes further legislation to be enacted. Okay. And if we just look a little bit about this, and I'll be willing to share this with you. If you look at part 4 of the Health Act, it talks about, you know, I call it the leadership and governance. Yeah. It talks about the Kenya Health Sector Intergovernmental Consultative Forum, you know, and therein it prescribes the rights and duties of national government. You're asking me to put in my video. I don't know if you can
see. We can see you. Yeah, we can see you.
So yes. It does talk about, you know, the duties of national government, which is to develop health policies, law, administrative procedures, and programs for purposes of progressive realization of health rights. Now, remember, health is one of the rights that you just don't wake up and, yeah, we are there, like the other ones. It's something that you continuously work on, you know? So county governments, on the other hand, are supposed, of course, to establish a county executive department responsible for health. That's under Section 19(1) of the Health Act of 2017. Another part deals with health financing. If we see Section 86(1), I think this is what the Ministry of Health is also trying to work on. It says that the government shall ensure, this cabinet secretary actually, shall ensure progressive financial access to UHC and develop mechanisms for an integrated national health insurance system. And if this is what triggered the amendments, the National Health Insurance, remember the NHIF used to be the National Hospital Insurance Fund Act, but now it's different, the National Health Insurance System, where now every Kenyan citizen is supposed to be under the National Health Insurance Scheme. So this was triggered by Section 86, you know, of the Health Act. Then we need to define, of course, public financing of the healthcare framework. So that's under health financing. Now, professionally, under the health workforce, because I think this is what may interest many people. How are we arranged as the health workforce? What is the law that takes care of us as professionals? So we have part 6, which establishes the Kenya Health Professional Oversight Authority, KNH-UoN, under Section 61 and 2. And this one, you know, lists professional bodies underneath. And KNH-UoN is allowed to look through and structure professional bodies. The other day, the Kenya Law Reform Commission got a reference from, and I'd be curious to know what you health professionals think. We have people who practice traditional medicine and feel that to be classified to be professional. So, you know, so they should be having, and we're saying that should they have a conversation with KNH-UoN, where should they be? So we also have the Kenya Health Human Resource Advisory Council. So those are the 2 that deal with health workforce. So we've talked about financing, we've talked about health workforce under the Health Act of 2017. The Health Act of 2017 also talks about health service delivery in terms of population-based. So it talks about the promotion and advancement of public under Part 8, promotion and advancement of public and environmental health. So if you read Section 61A, it talks about to promote health and counter adverse influence on people's health. Section 68(2) talks about the need to have measures to manage environmental risk factors, and Section 69, but I'll share this. So we also have health technology assessments, which are talked about under Section 86(1). On health service delivery, that's on Part 3. It talks about public health facilities, you know, that we need to have public health facilities, and there's a way in which they are gazetted, and we saw the Ministry of Health do this. Then private sector participation is also talked about. Then we have the first schedule that deals with the technical classification of the levels of healthcare delivery. So levels of healthcare delivery is now in the law. I think I cannot talk so much about that because I don't know, how you feel in terms of levels of health. That one I leave
Okay.
it to health professionals to talk about it, but it's something that's already in the Health Act. Now, another crucial one to take cognizant of is medical products and health technologies, which includes food. And here we've had a lot of, struggle. Should food be, the Kenya Food and Drugs Bill? People have felt that food should be left to agriculture. Who should regulate food is the question on the table. Is it under the Ministry of Health? Should it be under the Ministry of Agriculture? How should food be regulated for Kenya? So Part 7 of the Health Act talks about the regulations of health products and health technologies, talks about the need to establish a single regulatory body for health products and technologies, and that we need to, under Section 69(1)(d) for me, it says that there's need for the country to develop, what is it called? To develop a risk-based, sustainable, integrated food safety system. Then we have health information. On health information, we see Part 15, which talks about e-health, that there's need to establish a e-legislation, which was to be enacted 3 years ago from 2017. So that's 2018, 2019, 2020. We are now in 2023. So I don't know whether we are within our timeline. Then Section 105(1) talks about the need to establish and maintain a comprehensive integrated health information system. So on health research, remember we have NACOSTI that's supposed to regulate and assure quality in the science, technology, and innovation sector and advise the government on matters related thereto. So we want the country to be driven by a science-based, risk-analyzed, health decision-making. So gone are the days when the CS would sit and put people in a table and say, you tell me. So we want the country to have quality in the science, technology, and innovation sector. Then there's need to promote that's 14, talks about the promotion and conduct of research.
Sorry, Annette, let me just take you back a little bit on NACOSTI because I don't comprehend it extremely very well. So it's also coming from the health law, or it's from somewhere else?
Now, when you read the Health Act, that's Part 14.
Yeah.
Under Section 93(1), it talks about the need to establish of a National Health Research Committee. Okay. But that part talks about the need to have a promotion and the conduct of research for health. Now, yes. NACOSTI is a standalone legislation, right?
Yes.
And what it's supposed to do, it's supposed to regulate and assure quality in science. So you see, they allow science to continue, but I don't know if the Health Act has already established this National Health Research Committee. Because this committee is supposed to work very closely with NACOSTI. So they are to be regulated by NACOSTI. So health research is part of the innovations that the Health Act of 2017 came up with. And so I just want to briefly mention them so that, when we talk about law, it's one of the things people say is quite a mouthful. Where then are the changes from the Constitution of Kenya 2010? We have changes in the leadership. We have changes. Number one, the first change is on leadership and governance, where we have a devolved system of governance. So we have the national government and we have the county government. And then the second change that we have is on health financing. That gone are the days when people are going to spend a lot of out-of-pocket expenses. Remember, we have a lot of hospital detention going on, where patients are kept in the hospital as detainees, as prisoners, because they cannot pay, the hospital bill. So one of the reforms that came is with regards that there's need to put in money to ensure financial access to UHC and develop mechanisms for integrated national health insurance. So the second change is on health financing. The third change was on the workforce, that now we have an oversight body that's oversighting, all, health professionals, and that the health professionals must be recognized, they are categorized, and we have an oversight body, to deal with this. And that's why you have seen there's also a delinking. Those who are pharmacists, you have the pharmacy practice bill that's going on. So we are trying to delink the Pharmacy and Poison Board and the functions of that from the profession. So delink practice from profession. So the health workforce is the third big change that happened.
Sorry, Annette. I have to take you back. You just said the practice from the profession. I still don't get that. What do you mean?
So you see, when you read the Pharmacy and Poison Board Act, it provides for licensing, you understand, of health products and technologies. It provides for procedures. It provides for this. So they want me as a pharmacist, when I am a professional, I will be regulated by, my profession. Then that bill for practice is also separate. So before there was a lot of, the bill was consolidated, if you read it. So at the moment, the Pharmacy and Poison Board is trying to restructure itself so that there's a site for just the professional. And then now a part when you want to license, you can go. Yes.
Okay.
So
but
those
now
are the forms that have come with the health workforce. Okay.
Makes sense.
Yes. Then now we have the health service delivery, which we talked about, the national, and you saw there are talks to have a national public health institute. I don't know whether that's gonna, those are some of the discussions around the corridors, but we don't know. Then we have, health products and technologies in terms of how they are regulated, and health information and health research. So those are the building blocks that I want to discuss. So let's look at laws prior. So what were the laws prior to 2010? We had the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. We had the Medical and Dentist Practitioners Board Act of 1978. We had the Nursing Council of Kenya Act of 1983. We had the Radiation Protection Board of 1984. This law has now changed. It's the Nuclear Regulatory Authority Act now. We have the Clinical Officers Council of 1989. It has also been revised. We have the Medical Lab and Technicians and Technologies Board of 2000. That legislation has also changed. And then we have the Council of the Institute of Nutritionists and Dietitians. When I'm reading these laws, can you see your profession? Everyone had their own law. Nursing Council, Medical Lab Technicians and Technologies. Now, these are the legislations after 2010. We have the Public Health Officers and Technicians Council Act of 2013. We have the Physiotherapy Council of Kenya of 2014. We have the Counselors, Psychologists, and Physiotherapists Board Act of 2014. And we have the Health Records and Information Managers Board of 2016. And you can see these are now acts that have gone back, and we are saying that they have been trying to now comply again with the Constitution of Kenya 2010. So I want to leave it at that because we were just discussing the health system. And then briefly look at, in terms of other legislations that we've been told we need to enact under the Health Act. We have something on procurement, Section 37(1, we talked about the procurement of health products and technologies. So that's how the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority Act, the KEMSA Act of 2013, was born. So there are many other pieces of legislation that are supposed to come into force, the e-health bill, the National Blood Transfusion Bill is supposed to be enacted.
I'm actually glad, Annette, you mentioned the national blood transfusion one. So when a law is enacted and it's from a bill, it starts from a bill.
Yes.
Maybe we can start there. My questions can start there. In terms of how does one develop a law? You start with a bill. So who sponsors the bill? How is a bill? Who is allowed to sponsor a bill? If you can explain that for us so that we can have a good breakdown.
Okay. So let's just take this one as an example. We have part 9, right? Part 11. Part 11 of the Health Act of 2017. It talks about human organs, human blood, blood products, and other tissues and gametes. We call them gametes. The people who know how to pronounce that word. So section 85(1) specifically instructs under the Health Act of 2017 that there is established the National Blood Transfusion Service, right? So this service is supposed now we go and you see now the Health Act of 2017 cannot go into the nitty-gritties of how that National Blood Transfusion Service is supposed to look like. Am I right?
Yes.
So if you are developing a framework, remember what we talked about, that a framework about duties, talks about rights, talks about responsibilities, talks about governance structures, okay? So if you've been told to establish this bill, now you will need to develop a comprehensive framework that talks about governance blood transfusion service. How does it look like? Number 2, what then are the responsibilities for anybody who deals with blood products, tissue, or gametes, yes, or human organs? Then, what are the offenses? So we now go into the nitty-gritties as drafters and take drafting instructions, and you think about the bigger picture. Now, here is where we need the health participate in lawmaking, because you are better placed to feed into the framework. This is where public participation should happen. Because you leave people in a room to come up with the law, yet, if you sit as professionals, you can be able to critique and say, no. I think there's someone who was the last, there was a blood, I think, summit, and there is a group of doctors who say that for Kenya, we think that every Kenyan citizen, when they are born, they should sign up that should something happen to them, I only heard this in the medical profession, that death is in 2 ways. That there's brain death, that if I should automatically have already signed up for my organs to be donated to somebody else. But you see, for Kenya, that's not the current situation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you must seek consent from the family. So even that person, at the point at which they are brain dead, they cannot have the option of giving the consent. Okay, so consent should be obtained prior. That if I am a citizen, then automatically this should be there, right? So all that cannot be in the Health Act. You must come up with the legislation. So we write that in the law. Then after we write it, a bill will find its way to Parliament in 2 ways. One, it can be a government-sponsored bill, meaning it is forwarded by the Ministry of Health to the Leader of Majority, who puts it in Parliament as a government-sponsored bill. Or it can be a private member who actually sponsors the bill itself in Parliament. So those are the 2 ways in which the law is made. So how can I, as a doctor, or how can I, as a pharmacist, how can I, as a nurse, participate? I will check within the Parliament, calendar in the bill tracker and see which bill affects my sector. And this is quite instrumental because the health workforce is already organized. And you can even take it up yourselves as Look at the bill, look at Parliament. Bills are on health legislation are there that are going to touch on us. Have a day, discuss, write your proposals in Parliament.
Annette, I'm sorry, we're having difficulties hearing you very well. I don't know, I would propose the camera to be off so that we can, it doesn't affect your quality of your speech. It's really going on and off, on and off.
Okay, 1 minute. I'm trying to turn it off. Are we there? Are we there?
Not, yeah, much better. I hope it won't affect on the quality of your sound. But yeah, we are getting you. There's the bill tracker, and where can we get this bill tracker?
The bill tracker is actually online within the Parliament website. Okay.
Within the Parliament website.
That's one. Okay. Number two, Parliament always puts an advertisement in the newspaper calling for comments on various pieces of legislation. So we can also, take an opportunity to participate in that. So you just take your members through what the bill is proposing. And then as health professionals, you're able to say, you know what, I don't think this will work. I think this one can be better enriched in this manner. I think this one is outdated, like for instance, there's the, what is it called? There's a bill on intersex, for instance, persons who are born intersex. And we're saying that, we don't want any interference with their genitalia until they're 18 years old. And you see, I was talking to one of a gynecologist doctor, and she's, an expert. And she was saying, I don't understand why we should wait until, an intersex person is a person who's born with both genetics, male and female. Why we should wait until they turn 18? Because there is a test and, look into their genetic makeup and say, which one is it? But I was like, we didn't, those are some of the things we've not asked medical professionals to participate and have arguments and say, can this be done? So those are ways, there's a lot of need for the health workforce and the health professionals to engage in the lawmaking process to enrich it. Because sometimes the opportunity that's given, you have younger people, we have people who are in research, people who are constantly reading, and they can reach the lawmaking process, because health is complex. It's not just anybody who can legislate on health. We need a lot of experts. This is dealing with human life and the rights to life. So it's quite integral in participation. I think I've gone on, and now I'm going to take a break. I've tried to be as broad as possible. Allow for questions. Thanks.
Yeah. So just before please, you can post your questions on the Q&A platform, but in the meantime, just for us to understand the chronological events, I'll just repeat a few things to get an affirmation from Annette. So Annette, my understanding now is we had the Constitution. I think it was revised in 2010, right? Where now they looked at different framework, look at the different aspects of the framework, especially finance, workforce, and what have you. And from that is where laws were derived. And we had the health law in 2017, but we've had more laws. Answer the question. I don't know if even the question makes sense. I'm sorry about that. But question number 3. How many acts are derived from it, like this particular law in healthcare acts? How many health laws are you aware of that have come from it? Annette?
Wow, that's a question.
A hard question.
I don't want to give the exact number now, but I know there are numerous legislations.
There are numerous legislations.
So we have the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. Then the health sector has the mother law. We call it the mother law.
The mother law.
Yes, so the Health Act of 2017 is the mother law. So the mother law has given birth to many children and has been asked to give birth to many children under it.
Yeah.
We have the KNH-UoN, we have, many
laws, many laws.
But I can send a list after.
Okay, no problem. And then just to understand even further, we picked the example of the blood transfusion, and it's an act. But now in terms of regulations, because the cadaveric program, if I'm not wrong, should be covered in that particular act, and it's actually part of the mother law in 2017. So like how does it translate from an act to something which is implementable, Annette? What's the process of that happening? What's regulations?
Can I have your question again?
Like for instance, in the blood transfusion, we have the topic on cadaveric program. Like if somebody dies, they can be able to donate their organs. It's somehow covered in the law, but the implementation of it, the regulation part of it, is not yet. So how does that process occur?
So that's what we call poor lawmaking.
Okay.
It's important when we're coming up with any law that we're able to think through the beginning to the end. So sometimes you find that there is a provision in the law that says maybe someone can donate their organs, right? Voluntarily to any person they desire, right? But you find that there is no enabling mechanism. Number one, when they do this, who is the person who is in charge? Number two, who verifies? Number two, which form do they fill as a consent? So sometimes you find us coming up with regulations for further implementation. I think everyone has heard that there are regulations made under the Act, regulations made pursuant to the Act. So regulations are made by the executive for purposes of implementing the law, okay? So we would take that provision and now say, when now you want to, for instance, donate, number one, you must, first of all, maybe, and this is just hypothetical, first of all, a medical doctor must ascertain that there is no influence, or there is no, what we call, you have not been under duress, or you have not been coerced, you have not been paid to donate your organ. It must be from free will. So maybe you fill a form and say you've not been coerced. Then number two, we need to know clearly, who the recipient is and all this, that you've not been in contact. So for that, you find sometimes that a law needs to either have specified everything and seen the bigger picture, or if there's no bigger picture, we come up with further regulations for purposes of implementing. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I'll jump straight to the Q&As. Please post questions on the Q&A platform, and I'll start with nutritional supplements. You mentioned earlier food. Which industry should it be? If it's agriculture or healthcare? And someone is asking, nutritional supplements required to be regulated as medicines, and loophole exists in regulation, and many have taken advantage, peddling dangerous products. So how do you think we can circumnavigate this, or what is the standing of the law when it comes to nutritional supplements?
Thank you so much. So thank you, and I want to thank the person who's asked the question, because it's you've been able to pick out a key loophole. So as a health, it's a health product, is it a food? And that has been the thin line between, where to regulate it and who should regulate it. So my take is this, and I don't know, might be as radical as it should be, that if the health profession does not take the lead in the food that we eat, then you're going to have problems as a country. And that's the direction we are already going into in terms of decision making. That food is going to not be regulated 100% by health. So if the supplements are categorized as food, then it requires that, there will be someone looking at it as a supplement. But for now, sometimes it's categorized as a health product. Sometimes it's categorized as food. So we don't even know who is regulating. There's a lot of loopholes, as you said. But we have not taken a position as a country yet as to who should regulate food. So that's the dilemma.
Just to make us have a better understanding, what's happening in, let's say, the Middle East countries, or probably American countries, or other African countries? Who's regulating their food?
You see, for America, they have the FDA, right? So the
Yes.
FDA regulates, and that was the initial framework that the Ministry of Health developed.
Okay.
The FDA, the Food Drugs Authority, regulates everything. So it gives requirements for food, and it looks at the safety. Remember, we're talking about food safety. The gap is we don't have a designated person in Kenya who looks at food. Both agriculture play a role in food safety, and the Ministry of Health play a role in food safety. Now, what has been the challenge? For instance, let's take animal products as an example, right? Sometimes our animal products are given antibiotics, right? So when they take antibiotics, this one I'm not well placed. I'm even shy in talking about it. Then by the time it's now coming to our plate, right? They call it the farm to fork. Who should ensure safety at that point? So when it's coming to the table that we are eating, who makes sure that it is safe from the farm to the fork? At the moment in Kenya, I don't think we have any person who's designated. And you see, it should be the role of health to say that these fertilizers or these antibiotics that were given to this animal, then they're at this level. So by the time it's good to be eaten, it's not good to be eaten, But we are all food safety in Kenya. We've taken a role to be done by different, competent agencies. So at the moment, food safety is looked at from, public health perspective, agriculture perspective, KEBS perspective in terms of standards. If it's plants, KEFIS is looking at it. So there are very many different, competent agencies that are looking at it. So unless we take, a stand as a country, then, I'm not so sure whether we will be able to ensure. But for other countries like America, it's one agency that deals with food safety, regulates, gives the standards, and everyone else just does compliance. Thanks.
Okay. It makes sense. In fact, when you mentioned FDA, I'm like, yeah, by the way, food drug, we always hear about it. Any regulations are usually done by them from the West, and we borrow heavily in terms of health from them as well. So the other questions are something basic as what is the meaning of enacting a law? So kindly answer.
So once a bill is something we call a legislative proposal. So before a bill becomes law, it's just a proposal. So it's proposed, it's introduced into the House, either by the leader of majority as a government-sponsored bill or as a private member bill. Then it goes through the first reading. When it's read in the first reading, then when it's read the second time, then it is committed to the relevant committees. So there are different committees in Parliament. So if it's a bill that's touching on health, it will go to the Committee on Health. So the Committee on Health will look at it, consider it, and then make a report, a committee report on it, and then it will be tabled for the third time for voting. So when it's voted by a majority, then it becomes the law, right? It goes to back to the speaker, then it is sent to the president for assent. Then once the president assents, it becomes law. So that is the process of enactment. So once it is signed into law, that's why you see the signing ceremony is so big. You hear the president has assented. Now, are there instances where the president says no? Yes, there are.
Yes.
When the president says no, then the bill goes back to the House. It's referred back to the speaker, then back to the House to reconsider the comments that the president has given. Then now they can change or not change depending on that, and then send it back to the president. So that's what, when the president refers it back, we call it a referral. Yeah.
It's called a referral. Huh?
When it is signed and assented to, that's when the law has been enacted and it becomes an act. And that's why we use the synonymous words. When it has not been enacted, it's a bill. When it becomes a law, it's an act. Thank you.
Okay. That's quite very clear way of breaking it down. So just to understand further, where would now the health professions be involved in the lawmaking process? One of the questions from one of the audience. In that whole process, where can us as healthcare professions participate in that process of lawmaking?
You can participate in 3 ways. One, you can be an initiator. So you can find where you feel there's a gap and where there's need for a law within the health sector. So you can prepare a legislative proposal. You can approach any member of parliament to develop that legislative proposal further into a bill. So that's one of the ways. If you look through the gaps, you say here is a gap, and you approach any member of parliament. It's called, a public, proposal from a member of the public. So you can do that. That's one. Number two, you can engage in pre-publication scrutiny. Any law that is already in the process of being enacted, then you can scrutinize it. You can see whether it's making sense for the country with your expertise. You can write your comments and you can send them to Parliament for consideration. The third way you can participate is in post-legislative scrutiny. So there's a law that was already enacted, it's already in force, and you can do a postmortem on it. You can see, is this law serving us anymore? If it's a 1983 law and it's so old and ancient, like for instance, the Tissue Act, right? It's very old. We should look at our Tissue Act. So we're waiting for the health profession to trigger and say, this law, it's no longer modern. It's no longer serving us. So you do a postmortem on it, you do a paper on it, you do a proposal on it for purpose, and you instigate the need for it to be reformed and changed. So those are the 3 ways you can participate. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can add a 4th way. You can also, sensitize each other on any new laws that have come up so that you're also well versed. So continuous legal education on how the laws are and how they affect you. Yeah, thanks.
Interesting. So for the third part of the participation, the postmortem, how long does it normally, is there a timeline where we are not allowed to do a postmortem, or is it just a free way? Because it would beat purpose if something was enacted 2 years ago for you to change, but maybe it makes sense.
Well, I don't think there's been any timeline, but we always say that it's good to give a piece of legislation, and this again comes in if we as a country endeavor that in our lawmaking process, we do a thorough job. We do a lot of proper research. We're able to factor in and take all the considerations for every measure. Then there'll be no need for quick amendments, okay? But sometimes there are things that trigger quick amendments, right? immediate amendments. So I can't say that there's a timeline. I'll always say that, sometimes it's good to give something time to see whether it would work. But sometimes there are acts that we call them dead ab initio. That even if it comes,
it's dead on arrival.
it won't work. It won't work.
Nice.
Like we've seen legislations that, not mentioning any names, that you put in place an authority and you put in place a board at the same time. So you find that the board and the authority are continuously fighting. Nothing can happen. You understand? That essentially means that this law, the governance structure was already wrong from the get-go. So it can't work. So we have to go back and immediately either remove one so that, the law can
function.
So it depends on a case-to-case basis. Yeah.
But
I would urge, that's why we are there. That's why the Kenya Law Reform Commission is there. The Office of the Attorney General is there. Your Member of Parliament is there. The Committee on Health is there. That you can engage and you see you're a university. You keep writing a lot of research and thesis and looking. And when you do this, I would also encourage you to look at the medical legal. Try and see it. Don't just look at the medic alone. Let's see how the medical and the law play out together. And if you bring out any, then we are able to analyze and see, here there's a gap. Like the participant who just highlighted the loophole in terms of nutritional supplements. We need to look at what is the framework governing this. Is it a health product? Is it a food supplement? Is it the nutritionist who prescribe it? Yeah.
Okay. So the other question that this particular audience is asking is related to county-specific health acts. And it's true because personally, I've come across one Kakamega County, I think Kakamega County Act, where they touch on matters related to health. So how is that supposed to align with the Mother Act? And if it's not aligned, what happens?
Now, statutory harmony is very key. And any legislative drafter who's drafting the law should ensure that there is no conflict. I think you've had lawyers say that this law is in conflict. We call them, some are in conflict. Like old acts, we say that they're repugnant to justice, But if it's conflicting, then there's a problem. However, I want us to appreciate the county system, right? County governments have a county assembly, and the county assembly is mandated to come up with any legislation. However, we've been encouraging them not to be in conflict with each other. So it's to ensure that there is statutory harmony between the two. But remember, we still have a lot of, we call it teething, because our devolution happened bang. It happened with a bang. The president stood on a podium and said, devolve everything. So counties started, they didn't have law in place, they didn't have, all this. So we tried to develop some model laws for them. Some just copy and paste exactly as it is because the experts were very few. But these are things that we are correcting along the way. And remember, national government and county government need to have mutual respect. That's what the Constitution says, for each other. If I respect the national government or a national law, then I'll make sure that it is, I take cognizance of what is there. Because remember the national government, as I said initially, it's giving, policy direction. And policy, Article 10, binds every single person. Yeah.
So just to make me understand the vision, I'll take an example like India, for instance. New Delhi has a specific law to New Delhi in terms of corneal transplants. They would say that.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm saying, for example, New Delhi. I'm just picking India because it's just one law that I am weirdly familiar with. New Delhi will have a law that they would not allow corneal transplants in New Delhi states. However, if you go to another state, the corneal transplant would be available to a foreigner. So is that the direction that county and national is that where Kenya would be in maybe in the next 10, 20 years, whereby different counties would have different laws governing their health sectors? Is that something where it will go as a possibility? Over to you, Annette.
That's a very interesting question. I've never really thought about it. But I don't know if Kenya would take that direction based on Article 186 of the Constitution, because there is interdependence, right? And where we are trying to align the national policy, it's not independent, but interdependence. So when we use the word interdependence, it means that our heartbeats need to be beating in the same rhythm. However, I think I'm not going to answer that question. It's something that I need to also think about and think through it, because it's quite interesting. But I don't know whether our devolved system is not delinked in that manner like India. It's not a federal state system. We still try, remember like the levels, it's government, it's one government at two levels. So it's not 47 independent governments. And remember that was the argument initially when we went into devolution. Our counties independent, 100%, or they're interdependent. And the question was, it is one government, just at two levels. But it's an interesting question. Maybe someone has an idea.
But you've actually clarified it already, because you've answered a much deeper question in terms of the autonomy of county government. If it's just two levels, not like 40, 49 or 48 for that matter. So another question from one of the members of audience is, counties also prepare and pass bills into act. Is this the part of their functions, and how does this align to national health laws? It's more or less similar to what we've been answering, but maybe you can clarify it better.
So remember, counties have the same way we have a legislature, we have the executive, and we have the parliament. Counties have a county assembly. They have the office of the governor, who's like the president. And then they also have, those two. The judiciary is not delinked. So they too are able to come up with any legislation. So they are governed under the County Governments Act, which allows them and says the do's and the don'ts and their obligations and rights. So they function just like that. They come up. But every time we are noticing with practice that every time they're developing a legislation, they do take cognizance of a national law. And if it's there, they just adopt or adapt it to suit themselves. I think that's how best I can address that. Thank you.
Thank you. Makes sense. So the other question is more of a clarification. Maybe I got it wrong, but just to clarify so that we can hear it from you. Does Kenyan law allow organ donation from cadaver or someone who passes away and had consented to organ donation within the timelines for donation, like they do in America?
I don't want to answer that question.
It's usually a heavy question to answer, but yeah.
The Kenya Law Reform Commission recently got a referral, that they need to review our tissue and organ donation act. And the Ministry of Health is also trying to spearhead that.
Okay.
It's something we need to look into. There are many issues surrounding the whole sector. So I know a bit about the issues, but I cannot pinpoint and tell you that there's specific legislation that is addressing our current needs at the moment. I feel it's an area where we could do more as a country. Yes.
Okay, that's great. So there was a time you talked about the Kenya Health Professional Oversight Authority, and even insinuated if the herbal doctors are supposed to herbal I don't know the following after that, if it's doctor, clinicians, or whatever, but herbalists, if they should be incorporated within it. But there are more actually cadres which are recognized in the health industry, like EMT paramedics and opticians, all of that. How are they governed for now if they're not yet under KH4? Or how long does it take for them to actually register with KH4 for them to be recognized by law?
So I think KH4 have been developing regulations and rules to try and help health professionals to organize themselves. Why I love the health force work, and I said this is a key, change in terms of health workforce and how you're supposed to you're organized within yourself, is that as a professional body, once you register yourself as a society or together, then you just approach KH4 and they recognize you. So we have those that are recognized and we have those that are not recognized that KH4 has been working towards recognize. So I think it's a process they're still doing themselves. I don't want to speak for them, but I think there's something that about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if, in short, if you feel like you're not well represented, KH4 is the best stopping site. And I think they've circulated enough notice and memos for the healthcare professions to actually register. Now, Annette, there's this discussion on Health Service Commission. And it's, it's there in the Vision 2030 for Kenya to have a Health Service Commission. But how is that anchored in law? And is it something which is possible? Over to you.
Oh, wow. It's an interesting question. And I think I need to do a little bit of more research on that in terms of the commission. But what I know the Health Act of 2017 says that if you are, we call you a specialist, you're a national resource, right? You belong to the country. You don't belong to the county. You belong to the country. The health profession remains unique, in my opinion, and that there is certain, uniqueness. There's procedures of transfer, procedures of recruitment, procedures of internship placement that are quite unique from other professions. So the question is, should public service be able to, remuneration, retention, all those human resource issues? So the question is public service best placed to deal with the human resource issue? So that's not a question I may answer. That's a question where you as a professional must think about your human resource needs. I know we have KNH-UoN that was supposed to address some of the issues. There have been discussions around disbanding them and that they are a duplication, that there's public service, but it's for you as a health professionals to speak out. Remember when you have a nurse, that nurse is for the country. They are a health resource. That's why the ban on nurses moving, sometimes it happens, we say, no, they cannot go out of the country anymore. Or we say our doctors, other doctors coming from other countries, even if we need them, no, this is affected. So there are certain unique human resource issues. The need as to whether to have a health commission or not will depend on a serious analysis of those issues and a very in-depth, answer to those issues that affect. But you also must be very candid about the challenges that you face. Because remember, when you're in public service, it means that in terms of remuneration, remember we have the SRC, and then we have the Public Service Commission that determines the terms and conditions of service. The terms and conditions for service for the healthcare workers are quite unique. I mean, I don't work past 5. Our doctor is coming in at 5. A nurse is coming in at 5. So those are the differences. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And we've discussed so much about how the law and the process of making it, and it's already enacted, and now it is in law. I would take in an example of emergency and human rights. We all have the right to get emergency services. That is in law. Now I want to shift the discussion towards punishments of law. um how does that work? Because and how should we be um more sensitized? Like you mentioned, we look at medical legal perspectives because we would easily find ourselves in court if we are not mindful, or and ignorance is not an excuse in the eyes of the law. So how what is the best advice you'd give us in terms of be wary of the punishments of law?
Thank you. Now, every law has offenses and penalties therein that are inbuilt. And these days, we have a citizenry that is very well aware of their rights. You know, gone are the days when even lawyers, we would get away with so many things because the citizenry was not litigious and they were not aware of their rights. But now we are in a place where a lot of people are aware of their rights, and especially their right to health. So like the right to emergency treatment, it means that a hospital cannot deny a patient, treatment, you know. And we need to be aware. Ignorance of the law is no defense. You can't say, I didn't know. But the same way you have gone ahead as health professionals to educate the citizenry on their patient rights. What are the doctor's rights? What are the pharmacist's rights? What are the health workforce rights and obligations? Therein, once you understand them, even within the professional bodies, these are things you have to continuously bring to the attention of your members, because we are, having many and many more people having their licenses revoked. Maybe you didn't know, maybe you're ignorant, maybe you did not know about the amendment, and that's why it's crucial to stay up to date with the laws that are enforced. So the same way we have patient rights charter, this, let's also continuously publish. We say health information is crucial, but you have to start with yourself. Why do we always start with, the other people? Why doesn't health information also start with us as the health profession? Let's know what is the information that I need to know, for myself, because ignorance of the law is no defense.
Okay. I like that. And I would take an example of somebody had asked about the single business permit. Yeah. So sometimes Kanjos usually come to the clinics and start asking about single business permits and associate it with the service delivery. Where's the connect, number one, there? Because that's a question somebody has asked, and I hope I understood the question correctly. But in terms of let me leave you there while I restructure my thinking.
So you have your profession and then you have your business, right? So sometimes as a health profession, you undertake to do a business within the profession. So what we are slowly realizing, and remember there are certain reforms that our former president was very crucial on that. You heard about them. It was called the ease of business reforms, because there were so many processes in registering to start up in Kenya. You would have to go register the premises, then register yourself as a profession. Then again, I don't know, one is 1 year, another one is 2 years. Then now you register with the county government as well. There are many registration processes. And we've been asking that the government considers making it very easy. So if you have a business permit or you have been licensed here, why can't we just have one? So I know at the moment it's quite scattered around, because if you are a nurse, for instance, and you want to register your own clinic or a nursing home, you get approval from the nursing council and you pay some money. You've already also paid for your nursing license as well, which will be attached and displayed within the facility. Then again, you will go for inspection from the county for those premises, and then you pay another fee again. Then you register a business name or a company under the Companies Act. So there are all those procedures. So I think at the moment, those are the procedures, but maybe this is one area where we all need to begin to speak the language of reform, so that there's an ease with which, because if the right to health is to be realized, we cannot be curtailing the health professions when they want to establish businesses to help deal with actual realization of that right to health. Thank you.
Makes sense. Thank you very much. And in terms of, you mentioned it's good for us to keep ourselves up to date, and our licenses may be revoked and what have you. So the question is, which are the best resources to actually go and check what is happening in the country, especially when it comes to medical legal cases? Where can we follow? Is it something which is publicly available? And if it is, which sites are the best to go?
We have the National Council for Law Reporting, Kenya Law Reports. If you go to their website, they have bills, they have regulations, they have all the laws. They also have a case search where you can search cases. For instance, if you are a medical doctor, you can just search cases starting on medical doctors, and they will all come, and you look at recent rulings, and you see how is the court about this. For instance, one of the recent researches the Kenya Law Reform Commission has been doing is on hospital detention. And hospital detention is actually a crime. It's actually an offense to detain someone.
In both public and private?
It's in the law.
In both public and private hospitals. Sorry, I just need that clarified. Yeah? For all hospitals?
Yes. You're not allowed to detain somebody. You understand? Because you're infringing on their right to liberty. But we have patients who are detained for payment of hospital bills, which keeps them at risk for infection. Some are, even if it's women, they're at risk for, having their human dignity violated, And we've seen people who've gone to court, and we've seen pronouncements in court that, this is illegal, it's arbitrary. But we've also seen the court saying that someone is supposed to pay their debt. Someone has a right to profit as well if you have a hospital. So then what is the balance, the legal balance? So we need to develop a mechanism where there's a payment plan option, there's all this, there's health financing. So you see. So
sorry, Annette, just for me to understand.
Yes.
Annette. So just to understand, is there like a timeline to detaining? What is the definition of detaining?
You're not supposed
more than 24 hours? Or
you're not supposed to detain anybody. There's no legal framework, but you're not supposed to detain anybody for non-payment of hospital bills. Number two, we see a lot of hospitals taking in logbooks and what is it called? Your title deeds. Then how do you then realize it into lien? How do you take it as a lien? We call it a lien. You're holding it so that someone can pay. And we've seen people who've, I know a lady from, is it one of the hospitals, was saying that she has in her safe, she has so many title deeds. No one has ever come back to pick them because they just report it as lost and they get a new one. So there's need for a legal framework on how you can realize that debt. In other countries, the medical profession is not concerned about bills. You just treat, and there's a billing department with debt collectors who follow up the person once they're well. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. So, those are things we need to think about. So it's a violation of a human right.
Interesting. That goes to the probably health managers, because there's somebody even was asking about recognition of health management as I guess a cadre or as a profession. So with that, Annette, we've discussed so many things, and because of time, I would not be able to ask all the questions on the Q&A platform. But as a summary, I think we've learned a lot, and maybe you can summarize and give us a quick recap and takeaway message.
Mine is to say that, Kenya's health laws are critical because of the right to health. It's a principle and constitutional right. We want more public participation, more engagement from the health sector. We want you to be interested in the law, and we want your participation. Secondly, I'd like to, say that there are many gaps and lacunas that, our naked eye as lay people, we will not be able to see it, but the health medics know. So we would like to hear from you. And I personally, say that this is the most important profession in Kenya at the moment, that we all need to back you up and make sure that you have a functioning legal framework that is enabling. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's quite kind of you to say that it's one of the most important professions in Kenya, because unfortunately, majority of us don't feel that way, and it's good to get reassurance and to see that there's commitment from other professions to make our professions better. So with that, we'll end the session today. Sorry, we cannot be able to address all the questions, but we will find another forum to be able to discuss this further.
Maybe you can send me all the questions, and I can do a write-up on it, and then you can post maybe to everyone's email.
Okay, I think that's essentially fair, but we'll try and copy, screenshot all of them, because after the Zoom, it automatically disappears. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening in. With that, I'd like to say have a blessed weekend. I don't think we have a session tomorrow. And with that, asante sana, and asante sana, Annette, for taking your time to give us your insights and your knowledge on the law. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.